Hello everyone, RVer Frank here with Kathee and Coco. And we are traveling out in these parts on our way to Bishop, California. We are continuing north on this journey up the old El Camino Sierra US 395 highway. Having grown up in the Owens Valley, I thought I would make this video along the way that highlights the diverse history of the area and pioneer stories of how it was back in the day. So come along, join us, and enjoy the ride and a little bit of history. As we leave Lone Pine and those less known stories in the last video, there's more drama ahead on this old US 395. Next, I want to tell you a story that shook this valley no less than the 1872 earthquake. I'm referring to the Owens Valley water bores. It was the year 1905 when Los Angeles water officials began buying land and water rights in the Owens Valley. Other city officials, having inside information about a new aqueduct to be built in the future, also began privately buying up land and water rights from unsuspecting ranchers. At the time, President Theodore Roosevelt planned a badly needed federal reclamation and irrigation project in the Owens Valley. He also wanted to protect the environment. Due to their own self-interest, the powerful state and LA city officials successfully lobbied Congress and Roosevelt to abandon plans for the irrigation project. It seems Teddy was no less a politician, as he was a protector of the environment. One of the LA city officials buying a property in North Owens Valley was LA Mayor Fred Eaton. Eaton was a self-taught engineer. In 1875, at age 19, he was the superintendent of the LA City Water Company. By 1878, Eaton was the head of the water company. As head of the water company, Eaton first hired William Mulholland as a ditch digger to build water distribution canals from the LA River throughout the city of LA. Mulholland studied to become the future chief engineer of the aqueduct that was to bring Owens Valley water to a desert Los Angeles. As LA mayor, Eaton used the aqueduct project as advanced information to enrich himself and his associates at the expense of the city of LA and the Owens Valley landowners. While Eaton was buying up property, the president of the Inyo County Bank, Wilford Watterson, suspected what was happening. Like something straight out of the Old West movies, when Watterson saw one of Eaton's associates, Los Angeles City Clerk Harry Leland, on the street in Bishop, Watterson pulled a pistol and demanded Leland to hand over the property deed to a planned dam site in North Owens Valley. But Watterson was too late. Leland had already mailed the deed to the county courthouse. On the 29th of July, 1905, the Los Angeles Times newspaper broke the story. Los Angeles plans to grab Owens Valley water. the construction of the aqueduct was to become a continuing campaign covered by the newspaper. Over the many years it took to build the 250-mile-long aqueduct from its headwaters at an elevation of 3,812 feet to its outlet terminal in the San Fernando Valley at 1,135 feet. Not a single pump or moving part was required to move the water. For their $24 million investment, the citizens of Los Angeles got 215 miles of road, 230 miles of pipeline, 218 miles of power transmission line, and 377 miles of telegraph and telephone line. "57 camps were established for laborers, who numbered at their peak 3,900, who blasted and drilled 142 tunnels totaling more than 43 miles. They built 34 miles of open unlined channel, 39 miles of concrete lined channel, and 98 miles of covered conduit. The project also cost 43 lives, considered an improvement over previous large construction programs at the time. The project brought electricity to Los Angeles for the first time. 2 generating stations were built. The one in Cottonwood began generating power on November 13, 1908, and the San Francisco Power Plant No. 1 on March 18, 1917. It is amazing to remember that the entire project was built with muscle, human and animal, and liberal application of dynamite. Mulholland led the survey team and began construction on the aqueduct starting in 1908. On the 5th of November 1913, Los Angeles Aqueduct was finished and held an opening ceremony. Over 40,000 Los Angeles residents attended the grand opening. When the gates were officially opened, William Mulholland looked upon the tumbling white waters and proudly told the citizens of LA, "There it is, take it." And yet, on the day the aqueduct was opened, it was not finished. A series of drought years beginning in 1923 reminded everyone that the aqueduct lacked a head-end storage reservoir. Fred Eaton, now ex-LA mayor, the man who had inspired the aqueduct and risked his fortune to make it happen, was not at the opening ceremony. Eaton had stubbornly refused to lower his asking price for a portion of land he bought years earlier. This was the land originally planned by Mulholland to be used to build a head-end storage reservoir on the North Owens River. Mulholland, backed by the DWP board, had stubbornly refused to raise their offer to Eaton, but without that reservoir and low snowpack in the Sierra, meant low water flowing through the aqueduct. This land is called the Round Valley, Eaton's mountain pasture land, and was strategically located upstream of the Owens River Gorge, and was considered an excellent site for the head-end storage reservoir. Eventually, Eaton's demand for $1 million to sell it became so entrenched his relationship with Mulholland was ruptured. By now, with the aqueduct completed, Mulholland could have admitted the problem and paid Eaton's asking price of $1 million. Instead, to produce more water for Los Angeles, he ordered the drilling of wells and started buying up local irrigation canals in the Owens Valley. But while Los Angeles celebrated their new water source, Owens Valley residents fumed. The anger began to simmer as they saw their wells drying up. They watched Mulholland's Department of Water and Power fill in the irrigation ditches that once fed their fruit orchards. Mulholland knew the head-end storage reservoir needed to be built, but refused to authorize the purchase of the Eaton land, and so the head-end storage reservoir would be built by Mulholland on another site. The center of Mulholland's resistance became the Inyo County Bank in Bishop. The bank was owned by Wilfred Watterson and Mark Watterson. There was also an Uncle George Watterson. The Wattersons would gather around their family table and had that Owens Valley pioneer determination of power and expertise, with a similar drive to that of the San Fernando Land Syndicate's land control effectiveness in Los Angeles. Besides holding extensive business and mining interests across Owens Valley, the Wattersons headed the Owens Valley Irrigation District, which sought to organize landowners in a united front against Mulholland and the DWP. Still, a few farmers chose to sell out to the DWP, or the drought forced others to just give up. Only the bravest and the most stubborn farmers hung on and followed the Wattersons, and many of those who did saw their soil reduced to dust and their trees wither and die. Some desperate farmers were reduced to stealing water from the aqueduct. When LA responded by sending in armed private detectives to arrest violators, the Wattersons asked the governor to send in the National Guard. The governor, who had depended on the LA elite for his re-election, refused. In the decade that followed, Owens Valley residents got madder and madder as Los Angeles bought up, piecemeal, more and more of their land and water rights. The rage further intensified. On May 10, 1924, when Los Angeles filed a suit accusing some of the valley farmers of wrongfully diverting water into their irrigation ditches. 10 days later, the farmers answered the suit with dynamite, blowing up a spillway gate near Lone Pine. At 1:30 a.m. on the 21st of May, 1924, a party of about 40 men cut through a fence around the aqueduct's Lone Pine Spill Gateway called Alabama Gates. The attendants were peacefully detained, and several sticks of dynamite were set off against the pipe, blowing it apart and sending the water spilling across the desert floor. Now it was war. On the 23rd of May, 1924, Los Angeles aqueduct damage is shown after an explosion, and an aerial photo shows the damage about 3 miles north of Lone Pine. Mulholland's reaction was predictable. The old Irishman said he regretted the demise of so many of the valley's orchard trees, because now there were no longer enough trees to hang all of the troublemakers who lived there. More detectives were hired, and a $10,000 reward was offered for any information as to the identity of the dynamite gang. None was obtained. The DWP, seeking to avoid bad publicity, offered to buy out all members of the Owens Valley Irrigation District for $365 an acre. The Wattersons rejected that offer as insulting. 6 months later, in their most publicized move, on November 16, 1924, 70 armed Owens Valley men, led by Mark Watterson, descended on the aqueduct's Alabama gates, a diversion channel, valve head, and completely cut off the flow of water to the entire city of Los Angeles by opening the floodgates, emptying the water into the dry bed of Owens Lake. This time the explosions were only headlines. By the next day, the 70 men had become 700 men, women, and children who threw a gigantic picnic above the aqueduct. Businesses in Lone Pine and Bishop displayed signs in their shop windows informing their customers, "You can find me at the aqueduct." Movie cowboy star Tom Mix provided a mariachi band to entertain the crowd. When 2 carloads of armed DWP detectives arrived at the scene, the sheriff of Indio warned them not to cause trouble because, "I don't believe you will live through it." Newspapermen from San Francisco and out of state snapped pictures and wrote about plucky farmers standing up to the all-powerful Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Now, Los Angeles asked Governor to send in the National Guard, but again the governor refused. It suddenly occurred to Mulholland that his DWP was losing the Owens Valley water war. And at just this moment, Wilfred Watterson arrived in Los Angeles to present the DWP with 2 bills. Either pay the citizens of Owens Valley $5.3 million in reparations for damage to crops and livelihood, or $12 million to buy out the entire valley. The DWP refused, pleading that legally they were not allowed to buy land that did not have water rights attached, which was true. But the DWP also promised to return to the negotiation. The Wattersons decided that they had made their point, and the occupation of the Alabama gates ended after 4 days. But now the entire mess ended up in court. While the continued Owens Valley farmer uproar was causing aqueduct water flow interruptions, all the more reason the storage reservoir was needed that Mulholland refused to build on the Eaton land in Long Valley. Mulholland eventually settled on an area which he had considered for a potential dam site during the process of designing and building the Los Angeles Aqueduct, a section of San Francisco Canyon located north of the present-day Santa Clarita Valley, and began building the St. Francis Dam in 1924 and completed it in 1926. The bad news for the Wattersons was that this was a battlefield which favored the power structure of Los Angeles. Legal delay followed legal delay. As the court cases dragged out, slowly the farmers of the Owens Valley were squeezed between depressed markets and expensive water. What came next was predictable. On May 14, 1926, the site of a dynamite blast at Los Angeles Aqueduct about 4 miles north of Lone Pine. On the 20th of May, 1927, an explosion cut the aqueduct outside of Mojave. Over the next 2 months, there were 10 more bombings. A section of the aqueduct at No Name Canyon is shown after dynamite was used to destroy 400 feet of pipe on the 27th of May, 1927. Mulholland now sent an entire train of detectives into the Owens Valley. By far, the most spectacular and disastrous dynamiting came when the No Name siphon was blown out. This job was engineered by someone who knew how to do a real job of dynamiting. At least 2 cases of blasting gelatin were floated down the siphon. The time fuse on one of them burned as scheduled, and the resulting explosion tore a great hole in the siphon. For some reason or other, the second case did not reach its destination. It was found within the tunnel leading to the siphon after the explosion. The fuse on it had failed. The great gap by the explosion let the water out the siphon so fast that before air could get into it through the manhole above, a great vacuum had been created and about 300 feet of the monster steel pipe collapsed like so much tin. Reconstruction work continues on the Los Angeles Aqueduct at No Name Canyon after the May 27, 1927 dynamite explosion. Here is a map showing locations of 3 bombing sites on the Los Angeles Aqueduct in 10 days. A feeder pipe leading to Big Pine Powerhouse number 3 of the Los Angeles Aqueduct was damaged by a dynamite blast on the 28th of May 1927, a day after the major blast at No Name Canyon. The powerhouse was knocked out of commission. Jess Hession, then District Attorney of Inyo County, on the left, and J. Clark Sellers, a criminologist and handwriting expert, examined dynamite found near the Los Angeles Aqueduct. In charge of the investigation of the dynamiting of the Los Angeles Aqueduct were, from left, J. Clark Sellers, a criminologist and handwriting expert, John Piles, Chief Investigator, and Jess Hession, then District Attorney of Inyo County. Then came an unexpected development. Unknown to anyone else in the valley, Wilfred Watterson and his brother Mark, leaders in the water war against Los Angeles, had been diverting bank funds to shore up their crumbling enterprises. Their thefts revealed during a routine audit, the two were charged on August 13, 1927 with embezzling $450,000 and were convicted of 36 counts and sentenced to 10 years each in San Quentin. Their bank failed, and amongst the depositors who were wiped out was Fred Eaton, whose son had taken out a $300,000 mortgage on his ranch and the Owens River dam site with the Watterson Bank. The bank's assets were sold at auction, and eventually Los Angeles bought the dam site for a pittance. Eaton's finances crumbled, and his ranch was acquired by the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, where Crawley Lake was created 30 years later for the aqueduct system new storage reservoir. After the bank was officially closed, a note was left taped to the locked front door. It said, "This result has been brought about by the last 4 years of destructive work carried on by the city of Los Angeles." Following the Watterson's conviction, attacks on the Los Angeles Aqueduct ceased for several years. In early 1928, Jess Hession, Inyo County District Attorney, filed charges against 6 Owens Valley residents for their part in one of the 1927 bombings. Following a preliminary hearing, all charges were dismissed on March 19, 1928. The Owens Valley opposition had lost its heart and soul. There would be future battles, and the Owens Valley would win more than a few, but that was in the future. On September 15, 1976, the exterior of the Los Angeles Aqueduct Alabama Hills Gatehouse, after an explosion buckled the floor and blew out the windows and a door. Aqueduct water escapes lower right through the damaged gate. The interior explosion buckled the floor and blew out windows and a door. One male juvenile was later arrested and convicted in this bombing. In March 1928, the St. Francis Dam, referred to earlier, failed due to unknown weak bedrock formations. The flood caused much destruction and there were many deaths downstream along the Santa Clara River. The collapse of St. Francis Dam is considered to be one of the worst American civil engineering failures of the 20th century and remains the second greatest loss of life in California's history after the 1906 San Francisco earthquake and fire. The disaster marked the end of Mulholland's career. So for those of you that made it to the end of this video, we want to thank you for watching and hope you found it interesting. Eventually we'll make it to Bishop, but we have a ways yet to go, with more interesting places and stories ahead to share along the way. So travel safe, and we will see you soon.